Hey everyone, welcome to the podcast. It is a gorgeous afternoon in Arizona. It's no longer 120 billion degrees or whatever we've been dealing with here. The weather's just turned. It's a great afternoon. I'm here with Lauren, and we're ready to talk business and business myths that kind of keep people from going and pursuing their dreams and going and taking that big leap of faith.
Yep. I'm excited for this one, Devon. So to give our listeners kind of a little background, the other day we were talking about what stops people from getting started with whether it be a dream or starting a business or whatever's going on in their life. And as we were talking about this, we realized that there's really 6 kind of mindsets people fall into that stop them. And we went through and we named these mindsets, and we thought it'd be fun if we took everybody through that and how this type of thinking can stop you.
Yeah, these are originals. We were kind of like playing around with it, and I we realized, like, I have a lot of conversations with people when they're like, I have this great idea, and I'm like, yeah, I think it's a great idea, and I think it's a good business plan, but so very few people follow through, and it's frustrating because you want the best for people. I'm not saying everybody needs to be an entrepreneur, or I'm not saying anything, but like, it is really, let's remove even the word entrepreneur, really, because people stop following their dreams for a lot of different reasons. And so we're like, why does that happen? It's frustrating when you see people like put the brakes on their life. And so we were just kind of trying to bucketize them into these various categories.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So let's start with the first one, which we called the status quo myth. And what this one is people who feel their success is tied to their status or education.
Yeah, I run into this a lot. And it normally is disguised a little bit, right? Because people will say things like, well, I never really went to college, so I don't think that, I could, I don't think I could do this. I'm telling you this idea, Devon, because I think you could do it, right? And it's funny because, like, I don't think I learned a single thing in college to help me in business. And I'm not trying to discourage anyone from university or anything like that. I think there's value in it, right? But like, this people they think it's for somebody else, right? Like they think, oh, if I had this kind of degree, I would then understand business. If I had this kind of degree, I could then go and pursue my dreams. Or, if, these blockers where we think we're basically not smart enough, like don't have enough education, or like, I need to go back and get my master's so I can start a company. Like, you need to have common sense to run a company, right? Like, I would tell you the geniuses of the world are the ones that kind of like have a harder time because so much of this stuff is common sense, which isn't necessarily common, right? But like, I don't think that anyone should put roadblocks up because they don't think they've got the degree behind it, and there's nothing that I don't think, and especially in 2024, that you can't practically learn online in 20 minutes that takes you an entire semester of college to learn. That would be practical for being an entrepreneur.
Yeah. Well, I laugh, and I'd like to get your opinion on this. So I went to school for business. I loved my college, but we actually had a degree in entrepreneurship. And naive me is like, oh, you got to go to school for that. Like, if you want to be an entrepreneur, you got to go to school. And now I look at it and I would, do you think you need that?
Yeah. So both of my boys are in business, right, in college. And that's, they both want to pursue entrepreneurialism, right? Like, and so, and it's funny. I'm like, but they won't listen to my podcast.
Yeah.
What is it? What's the Bible say? Familiarity breeds contempt.
Yes.
I don't blame them, boys. If you are listening right now, I don't blame you. But they hear too much of dad at home. But like, really, honestly, at the end of the day, like, if you want to be, if you want to walk in this type of world or any type of world, like, there's so much stuff at your fingertips. Like, if you really feel like you're missing the knowledge of it, like, there's like all these micro learning ability, like on YouTube, you could probably get just about any answer that you want in a very practical, laid out 20-minute class, And so I would really, I want people to kind of first off realize that this is a mindset. Most of it you're going to learn as you go. Almost everything I learned was never taught to me. I learned it as I went. And when I ran into roadblocks that I didn't know, I would then talk to people, research it, or then figure it out, right?
Yeah.
Then find out. And so, and honestly, I think that's what college does a good job. I think college teaches you to learn. It teaches you discipline in some ways, right? But like at the end of the day, that should never be a stumbling block. If you have something that you're passionate about, that you can see how I can at least take the next step, but you're worried about like the boogeyman behind step number 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm gonna tell you, there's gonna be, you're never gonna know it all. But when you do hit those roadblocks or you do run in that boogeyman situation, the information is out there. Like someone can help you, a mentor, a friend, someone's been there before. You can go online, you can listen to a podcast, you can read a book. Virtually everything that you need to know to be an entrepreneur or pursue your dream, whatever that might be in America, is at your fingertips, and you are rarely limited by a degree.
Yeah.
I think with the exception of like, maybe performing heart surgery or, something that actually requires a degree, what those professions are.
Yeah.
But like, if you're going to be a teacher, you need a teaching degree, like stuff like that. But I mean, with the exception of that, there's really, we live in a limitless society that everything is there if you're willing to kind of look for it. And right now, why waste the time learning stuff you don't need to?
Yeah.
Again, I'm not telling you to drop out of college. If that's what you're hearing, I'm not telling you that, right? But like, don't let the not having a degree discourage you from your dreams, because once you find those things, you can get very clear, specific answers somewhere online.
Yeah. I want you to tell me about the story you told me when we talked about this the first time, about the younger kid that you are mentoring, who you said you can feel his intimidation as he enters this workforce.
Yeah, he definitely, this is kind of going in that status world, right? Like he had never been around folks that he could relate to that had done big things, And so, he had gone to college, got a degree, very talented young man, gregarious, someone you want to be around, lots of skills, bilingual, like all like things that a lot of people don't even have, right? Like he has all these skills, and he was just going to go back and try to be a manager at a retail store. And I'm like, dude, like nothing wrong with that, but like I think you can strive a little bit further. And what I realized was he had kind of had that status, like he didn't think his status was enough, and he had never seen these people doing stuff. Like just if you don't see it, it's hard to believe it, right? Like, and I actually did a little short the other day. Like, even for me, like we limit ourselves to what we see and kind of what we're surrounded by. And I was in Barcelona, Spain a couple weeks ago, and I was going on a walk, and I walked past the mega yachts, right? And I kind of did the, oh, must be nice, like I did the same thing. I found myself doing the exact same thing, going, well, must be lucky, lucky or status or all of these different things. And I went through all of these exact same thoughts that he had at different levels, right? He thinks like I could never go have a professional career, right? Because he hadn't seen it, hadn't done it, and then started making these weird excuses. For me, I thought I could never have a mega yacht because these other people, well, whatever happened with them. And then I realized, and what the cool thing was, is I actually walked by, and one of them was like, I don't know, he was in like dorky shorts and like a mismatched t-shirt and flip-flops, looked like me.
Yeah.
Like, and I was like, oh my gosh, that guy's just like me. And I realized like, I've just kind of, I do the same thing to myself. And I was like, I probably need to dream bigger. And so that's what I was telling him. I'm like, dude, you need to dream bigger. And so I started showing him LinkedIn. I started showing him like these jobs. I'm like, you're qualified for this. One of them was enterprise. I'm like, you're qualified for this. Well, you're qualified for this. And right now he's pursuing some really great careers, and he's like this close to like getting his first opportunity. But we start to limit ourselves and think, wow, geez, if I had gone to this school or whatever,
Yeah.
So, and it's not, but like I said, the thing that like I was feeling all on my high horse, like, oh, this is great that I helped him. And then I realized I was suffering from the exact same thing.
Yeah. So the next mindset we have is the shady deal myth.
Hmm.
And that is you have to partake in shady tactics to get ahead to be successful.
Yeah. This is so propagated by the media and movies, and there's this idea that, business is always underhanded and shady, and, this person scratching that person's back, and well, of course they got that because they were in this fraternity or that fraternity and the Illuminati, and,
Yeah.
everyone has this, like, they just want to make excuses, like, and you hear people, right? Like, oh yeah, well, yeah, look at that last name, or like, well, you know how it is in business, right? And people like just think like, well, they know someone at the city, therefore they were able to get the zoning for this stuff. And I'm not saying stuff like that doesn't go on, right? Like there are shady people in business, right? And there are shady people that do shady things, right? But like that's not what keeps people from succeeding, right? And the idea that like I don't want to be like that, well, you're on your own high horse and you're acting like you're using that as an excuse, because I'm going to tell you, I haven't done anything shady. I've worked my butt off, right? Most people I know are in the exact same situations I am, where they went and they worked and they took risk and they had success, they had failure, and they're as honest as the day is long. Are they perfect people? No. Am I perfect? No. But like every business deal isn't done, white dude to white dude on the golf course, because you have the right name. And, at least I'm waiting for that. It's never happened to me, right? Like, and maybe I'm not good enough at golf, but like, I just think there's this mindset that, like people like associate like the Donald Trump kind of thing, that whole, and it's like, that's not reality. That's just not, maybe at one point, but that's not how life is anymore.
What do you think of the phrase success begets success?
So there is some truth to that, right? Like as you pick up momentum, things become easier, right? Like, let's be honest, if you work really hard and you have a certain credit score and you have X amount of dollars in the bank, even though you might not need a loan as badly as somebody else, people are going to want to loan you money, and they're going to want to loan it to you at a lower interest rate, right? Like, so is that unfair? I don't know. I think you work to get to that point, right? Like, is it unfair that like, well, gosh, something we do is I rarely pay for plane tickets because we put everything on our credit card and we get the miles, right? So like, that's like, is that unfair that I don't have to pay for a credit card, or I don't have to pay for plane tickets, but people who make less than me do? Like it definitely, you can see how that can be negative, but I would think of it more of a reward. Like, it's like, this is a reward for continuing to succeed. And so there can be the perception that it's unfair, but all of those opportunities are there, right? Like, that's like when I look at someone and go at the gym and I'm like, well, geez, like, how come did we get to see their 8-pack?
Yeah.
And I don't even have a 2-pack, right? Like, it's like, well, because they went to the gym every stinking day and they ate right and they worked out and they got their body that way, and they can do things that I can't do because they made sacrifices that I never made. And so now, does a second generation, third generation benefit from that? Absolutely. And is that fair? I'm gonna say there's some parts of it that aren't fair, but like, I think that as an excuse to not pursue, because just because other people are having successes doesn't preclude you from having the same. So what I would answer that is, yeah, I do think success begets success. So pursue that. Like, don't use that as a reason, as an excuse to not be the best you that you can be. Use that as a motivation because you want the success to be the success, right? But isn't it funny how we like to flip things on his head? Something that could be this amazing opportunity for you, you're using as an excuse to not do it. Like, wait, if success begets success, don't I want that for my children? Don't I want to work really hard so that my children start at another level? Isn't that a motivator for me instead of an excuse to not do it
in the first place?
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Okay, so the next one is the gimmick myth, and that's that you need to find some gimmick or fad that you have to get into early in order to be successful.
Yeah. I mean, we've all said this, right? I've even said it. Like, everyone said it. Like, well, here's my excuse. Like, well, if I had, gotten in earlier on like podcasting and Instagram, I'd have 1 million followers too, right? Like, like we all say kind of stuff like that. And then, but like, this is it's a really common excuse, right? Like, well, I should have gotten, if I'd gotten in on Disney early stock or whatever, or, if I had been there at Netflix when it was going, or, or if, network marketing, right? MLM marketing. People talk about that all the time. Like, well, the only people that really make money are the first ones in, right? Like, or like, and there's all this ideas like, well, geez, I can't start a sub shop because Subway's already there, right? Like, there's again, these are excuses. I would more use this as proof of concept, right? Like, yeah, maybe you don't want to start in a network marketing, but it doesn't mean like it's an excuse to not start something else because, I talk about this one all the time. The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. Second best time is today, right? Like, getting in early is kind of a weird thing. Like, that's like me saying, I don't want to do this podcast. I don't want to do social media. I don't want to do that stuff because I should have gotten in earlier. Or I can start today. Right? Like, and then I can work on it and we can try to make it better and we can try to make it excellent and grow and start what I am today and be the best that I am today from this moment in time. And 20 years from now, I'm going to be pretty glad that I got in when I did,
Yeah.
But again, it's like this weird excuse that we want to always think that the opportunity was back then.
Yeah.
The good old days. Oh, well, remember the good old days? Wait, you mean when interest rates were like people, because this is a common thing, right?
Yes.
Right now, interest rates are higher than they've been in the last, several years, many, many years. Not higher than they were in the 70s, You don't, when you go to buy a house, you have to put 20-30% down, like when my parents did. Like, I wish if I could have bought a house when the baby boomers were buying it, like, yeah, my mom also made $6,000 a year, right? Like, so like things are just different. And we always want to look back on history and glamorize it or whatever, and be like, if it was back in history, then I'd be in a better place today. You're part of history right now moving forward, right? So do what you can today moving forward and stop using that as an excuse.
What about, talk a little bit too about the fad side of things or the gimmick, because I think that's another part of this is not just get in early, but even like, well, I don't have a great idea that's going to make me $1 million, which is a thing people often say.
Yeah. I have, younger kids and I coach and stuff. And so I hear them talking all the time and they always come up to me. They're like, hey coach, what about drop shipping? Hey coach, I saw this guy on TikTok and he makes $30,000 a month on selling t-shirts. And what do you think about this? What do you think about that? And all like gimmicky stuff. And I tell them the same thing. I'm like, you can make money on anything if you pour your life into it. Right. But people think it's like, oh, well, and I heard somebody say this other day, oh, drop shipping's, dead now, or online t-shirt print. Like, it was dead then, right? But it's what you make of it. Anything is like what you make of it. If you pour your life into anything and you give your best, you can make it grow. But like people that run around and are chasing the latest gimmick and are trying to find that gimmick at the right time, at the right place, at the right opportunity, and you're going to make millions. Like, I have done business a long time. I know a lot of people. I've never met anyone or even had a person, one or two people removed from me that have made money off of the gimmicks
Mm-hmm.
without pouring their heart and soul into things.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen people make money off of abstract things, but like it wasn't because it got hot for a time and then it didn't.
Mm-hmm.
It's because they went and they worked really hard. They got really good at what they did, and then they just grew it.
Mm-hmm.
Like the same thing has always worked, right?
Yeah.
But like pursuing whatever like the latest fad is on TikTok, I think is a facade. I don't think it. I think it's a mirage. I'm sorry, it's a mirage, right? Like you're gonna get there and it's gonna be like gone because it doesn't really exist in the first place. Does that mean you can't make money selling T-shirts? Absolutely, you can. I know companies right now, like I know them that are worth about $40 million that basically started selling goofy sweaters for Christmas,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And now they make millions and they're worth millions. Is it because it was a gimmick? Well, sure, it was kind of gimmicky, but like they put their heart and soul and created a great company, right?
What you're selling doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It's how you do it.
Yeah, it's putting your heart and soul into something, and
Yeah.
and then once you got it, grow it.
Mm-hmm. The next one is the lost path myth, and that's people don't have a clue or a plan of where to even start because they've never actually witnessed real people or have had success that they can use.
Yeah, this is where you don't have a role model in your life. You've never seen it. So for me, when I grew up, I like my dad. He loved business, and he would always talk to me about it. And he admired entrepreneurs. He liked it. He would talk to me about it, kind of put it inside of me a little bit. But that just wasn't his way. He wasn't a risk taker. It wasn't his thing, but he admired it. So it kind of birthed it inside of me. But when I got, was in college and stuff, I look around and I didn't have any examples of it. Right. So I could never look at someone I knew and said, oh, they're a real person. I've hung out with them and they told me their story and I can see how a normal person can become an incredibly successful people. The only people that I had ever met were kind of already there, like, and they were like mythology kind of,
Yeah.
like they weren't real people to me. And so it wasn't until I moved to like California, and started to actually meet. I was in it because I was in a super, super small town and it was all super, super small mindset. And when I moved to California, it was kind of like the edge of the world. And I was meeting people, all kinds of different people at different points of the path, right? People that were at this mythical level, right? They're living in these gorgeous places on the beach and things that like, oh my gosh, like this is out of, a movie, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you met people that were like along the path of that. And then you met people that had just gotten started, were only like 5 years older than me, but were like doing stuff. And I could all of a sudden have this, it started to become real to me.
Yeah.
Like I can see the path to that. Right. And so, but a lot of people have never seen that. Right. And so it becomes very difficult for them. It's just, it's mythology, right? Like it's a myth. And so, for those folks, it's very difficult, right? Similar to the person I was talking about before, where it's like, if you don't have someone that can say, look, I'm a real person and these are the real steps, and you can see that for your own self, it becomes hard to even have a dream like that. It's more of a fantasy than it is a dream. A fantasy is kind of like, something you fantasize about but never think could be you.
Could ever happen.
And I think when you actually meet someone and you kind of see the path, it can kind of go from a fantasy to a dream. And because a dream is something I feel like is something that you can tangibly grab a hold of.
Let's say you had never moved to California. There are resources, or there are, whether it be a mentor or podcasts or YouTube, like what would you recommend to someone who's like, I don't have anybody in my life who I could look to for that? Where should I look to then?
And I'm glad you brought that up because that's what was frustrating me about before, right? Because so many people glamorize, like, well, back then I could have done it, right? But it's so hard now. But I would say that's not true. I think right now is easier. Back then, I didn't have, if I'd stayed in Ohio, I don't know who I'd have looked to. I don't know who my example would have been. I don't even know who, to this day, I don't know anyone that had done it back then. Like I would have been lost. I would have literally been blind on my own, kind of, feeling my way through it. But now in 2024, I mean, it's all right there. It's at our fingertips.
Yeah.
Like now there's good information, there's bad information, right?
Yeah.
Like, but you're listening to podcasts right now. This is real information, right? Like, and so I didn't have this. Now you have podcasts. Now you have these books. And I mean, you don't even have to read. You can have an audiobook. You don't have to read the audiobook. You can get the audiobook summary, right? You get it in 15 minutes, right? There's someone taught me the other day, and you're going to laugh because this is so, like, I'm sure everybody else in the world does this, but they're like, yeah, you can listen to it on like 1.5 speed. I just recently listened. I recently learned this. Probably people right now are listening to me on 1.5. But like, all of these resources are like right there. So it's like, I would say if that's where you're at today and you're going, I honestly don't have a single role model, find a role model on a podcast. Find someone that, whether it's me, whether whoever it is, right? And start gleaning from these sources, right? And Google it. Like, what do I do to, like, how do I get my business license? Anything you want is right there at your fingertips,
Okay, next one, the elite myth. Success is reserved for the privileged few. It's inherited, or Illuminati philosophy.
Yeah. There are, there's lots of folks out there like this, and I rub shoulders with them. I've seen them, the second, third generation, and people oftentimes will scoff at those people and be like, oh, well, they're third generation money or whatever. Like, listen, they're real people, right? And they've been given an opportunity, and that's their opportunity, right? That's their path. That has nothing to do with your path, right? I would say their path should be an inspiration for you to pursue so that your second and third generation can be on that path rather than a reason to not do this. Because is it true that there can be generational wealth? Absolutely, there's generational wealth. Does BlackRock control your daily life? No. Like, does the Illuminati control your daily life? No, right? Like, there's all of these people that are like, well, what's the point? BlackRock owns it all anyways. You don't even know what you're talking. You don't even know what BlackRock is. If someone said those words, they don't even know what BlackRock. Like people, like, they just say dumb stuff because of an excuse. Well, are the Rockefellers today incredibly wealthy? The third generation Rockefellers or fourth, whatever they are? Oh yeah. Wildly wealthy.
Yeah.
Does that mean that you can't be wealthy? No. That should be your inspiration.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you know what? They could be incredibly, and you know what that means for their kids? It doesn't mean that they're terrible people. It means that their kids can do amazing things and be a school teacher, right? Like, their kids can be amazing things and be a stay-at-home mom, right? Their kids can do amazing things and pursue their dreams, right? Like, this doesn't make them evil people, and them having wealth doesn't make them your enemy. Them having wealth doesn't mean that you can't create your own. It's an inspiration, not a hindrance to you pursuing your dreams, right? J.D. Rockefeller started somewhere. Like, we all start somewhere, right? So I started with $5,000 in a credit card, right? Like, and is my second and third generation, are they going to be better off? Absolutely. Are we going to be Rockefellers? Not yet. But I want to be. Like, I'm going to be honest. I'm trying to. Like, I'm striving towards that. I'm not mad at that. I'm using that as an inspiration for my family and where we're trying to go. And the people that are listening to this, I want them to have that kind of inspiration too. This is no one controls your future. We live in the greatest time in the greatest country, and opportunity has not passed us by. There's opportunity everywhere. And the fact that others have it does not mean that you can't.
Last one is the luck myth. And that's that striking gold or finding a successful idea is all luck. It's like finding a buried treasure.
Yeah, that is awesome, right? Like, the funny thing is, I think people genuinely think like, oh my gosh, I got super lucky. I came up with, Roy Kroc or whatever, just happened to make a cheeseburger at the right place at the right time, or like um, uh, Edison, somehow bumped his head and came up with the light bulb, or Colonel Sanders, mysteriously came up with like this flavor chicken. Every single one of these people, like failure after failure, like there's so many failures behind the successes. Like people think like, oh, they blindly struck gold. Oh, they blindly found these diamonds or whatever it is. They think it's this blind luck. And what it is people out there working their butts off day in, day out to create their own luck,
Yeah.
like they are creating luck. I think I read something about how many times like Colonel Sanders, which is funny, right? I don't know why we're talking about Colonel Sanders, but like how many times he failed with his secret recipe and like people that had turned him down, and he eventually like, well, fine, I'll make my own chicken. You know what I mean? like there's this whole idea again of like, they just got lucky. I'm not saying like there aren't people that get lucky in the world, but I don't know any of them. Like the successful people I know, every successful person I know got there by working their tails off and having an idea, and not even, like I said, a crazy idea. Like we were talking about in the other podcast, a plumber.
Yeah.
Who sold something for $30 million or sold his company for $30 million. Was he lucky? He was a plumber. Did he strike? No, he was a plumber, right?
Yeah.
Like this is like, there's the idea that you wake up and you come up with a lucky idea. I'm not saying it doesn't exist. I'm saying I've never met that person, but I've met so many people who have created their own luck, worked super hard and done this. And so these things start to become paralyzing to us because they're fed to us in movies and the media that it's for somebody else, right? And what happens is we grab onto those things. Those ideas sell, right? Like it's glamorous to have, the ultra wealthy white person, third generation, who's a terrible racist, awful person that hates you and is oppressing you and keeping you down and cheating and rigging the system and all these things. Like that's great for a movie. Like it's really good for James Bond, right? Like, and they have these underground layers, right? And these meetings with all these other rich people, right? Yeah. And like, this isn't true. This is not how the world is run, right? And BlackRock is coming and, is going to take your house, right? Like there's these thoughts, right? And they play out great in the media. They're not real. But what they are is they give us an excuse. If you would peel back the layers of each one of those, they're all based in fear. Every single one of those are based in fear. And what happens is we don't want to say, oh, the reason I don't pursue my dreams is I'm afraid.
Yeah. Doesn't sound good.
Yeah. Nobody says that.
Yeah.
Hey, well, you know what? The reason why I never started my company is because I'm scared to death. They would rather say, well, the reason I didn't start my company was because, if it had been the 80s and the interest rates or it would have been, whatever, say 10 years ago and the interest rates were what they were, or before, BlackRock or the whatever system that's been rigged against me, or because I don't have this degree, or it's, I'm not this color or that, I didn't get that privilege, or my dad's last name isn't this. We would much rather say those words rather than I'm scared to death and I don't know what to do, right? And it's based in fear. Like we pull the layers back and we realize this is fear that's keeping us from this. And the Bible is full of this: faith over fear, faith over fear, faith over fear. So we don't want to say like, I'm afraid. We want to say, I don't have an opportunity. It's been taken from me. No, that's not true. You're afraid. And I'm telling you, you can overcome those fears once you realize this is fear that's holding you back. Nothing else is holding you back. It's fear. And it's okay. Like this is part of all process. Like once you know that it's fear, now know it's something that it's a mindset that's holding you, and that's it. And you now can go, okay, I'm going to pray against that. I'm going to talk to people. I'm going to get encouraged. Yeah, I'm going to listen to this podcast.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I'm going to get encouraged and I'm going to have more faith than I have fear.
Mhm.
Now, I'm not telling you to be some moron, right? Like, you need to vet out your ideas, right? Like, I'm not telling you to jump in both feet and everything. 'Cause Devon told me not to be afraid of anything. Go for it. Like, no, have wisdom, right? Like, have some wisdom. Put together a business plan. Get, advice, but like, realize that most of the time what's holding you back is fear.
Mhm. Okay, so Devon, we recognize now these are myths. We understand where they're coming from or what they're rooted in. How can we apply this today? What can we do now?
Yeah. I think understand that, right? You realized, okay, I named it kind of thing. Like, it's, this excuse that I had, really it was fear. Now let's apply some wisdom against that, right?
Mhm.
Like, God gave us wisdom, right? There's a reason why we're afraid of heights,
Yeah.
right? Like, we want to be cautious, right? We
Mhm.
want to be wise, right? But once we start to set the fear aside, we can start to have wisdom around our future,
Mhm.
wisdom around our dream, wisdom around what I'm doing, and applying that wisdom. And now let's start to test that, right? Like, once we're past the faith, like, okay, I have this idea. Now let's start testing that idea. Let's put together a business plan. Now let's bring in people that we respect. Let's have them look at that, right? Now let's talk about how can we go to the next level, and is it wise to go to the next level versus am I fearful, right? And I think this is the kind of decision making. The fear gets you from even being there. Now I'm going to tell you there were many, many times in my life where I got past fear and I looked at things and I applied wisdom and I still decided not to do it,
Mhm.
right? And I think most of the time that was the right decision.
Mhm.
And I'm going to tell you there's times I got past there, I decided to do it and I still failed.
Mhm.
Maybe I should have just done it. But like, it was no longer fear holding me back,
Mhm.
right? And then I was able to begin the process of growth,
Mhm.
right? Begin the process of my dream, right? All of my companies have evolved, have changed, that's what life is, right? But I won't allow fear to hold me back. And I'm gonna tell you, there's all kinds of levels of this too. Like, just, I teach this right now because I've known it,
Mhm.
right? And I still know it. It's just at different levels,
Yeah.
right? Like, I'm gonna tell you, like, I saw, like, I read about Elon, right, Musk, and do you know, that literally when he sold PayPal, he took everything. And when I say everything, I don't mean like, oh, I took everything and reinvested it. Like, he took everything and put it in Solar City and Tesla.
Mhm.
Everything. So he made, like, I think he walked away with, like, it was something like 180 million in cash,
Uh-huh.
which you think Elon's worth billions or whatever. It's
Yeah.
like, it wasn't like he took, oh, he saved 30 million, he put 150. Like, he put everything in these other.
Uh-huh.
I don't think I could do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm afraid of that. And I literally had to acknowledge, like, I had to acknowledge that in my head. Now, is that wisdom or is that fear? I don't know. I'm working through it, right? Because I'm challenging myself, like, how do I go to my next level, right? Because I'm sitting here on my high horse going, oh, don't be fearful, go do this. But I've got to go to the next level.
Mhm.
And so I have all these fear things holding me back,
Yeah.
right? So what's the next level I'm going to go to? And how do I decide what's fear and what's wisdom? These are the questions I have to ask myself. So this is a constant battle in our life. And it's fun, it's challenging, and it's exciting. This will help grow us. But my challenge to everyone is to never be limited by the fear. Recognize it for what it is, no matter what level you're at, no matter where you're at in your life. I'm gonna try to end on this story. I coach soccer, and it's tryout week. And I had a young man, this is such a great story. I had a young man reach out to me and said, Coach, I'm a freshman. I love soccer. I'd really like to try out, but I have anxiety. And I was like, wow, I'm going to invest in this kid.
Mhm.
Right? Like, he had the courage to say, I have fear.
Yeah. Yeah.
Think about that. Think about being a 14, 15-year-old boy.
Mhm.
Reaching out to your high school varsity coach, who I'm some mythical creature to him, right? And saying, hey, I want to join soccer, but I have fear, right? Like I was like, that takes courage, right?
Yeah.
So he took that first step of seeing, like, I'm not going to use an excuse. You know what he could have said? He could have said, oh, I don't even like soccer anymore.
Yeah.
Right. Like he could have said,
I don't have my family didn't do soccer, so I don't really have the skills, or I'm not going to be able to do it.
Yeah, we don't have we don't play club. I don't play club, right?
Yeah.
So I know I'm not going to get. I mean, all of these different. He could have had his own set of excuses that he would have given names to.
Yeah.
That would have justified in his head, but he recognized at 14 years old he had fear. Go ahead.
I was going to say, what'd you say back to him?
Yeah, so I called him up. I'm like, I want to talk to him. I want to talk to you on the phone. He had the courage to get with me on the phone. He'd never met me. And I talked to him about what fear does to you. I said, this is Satan's plan, right? Like he wants to keep you from becoming who you are, and he wants to keep you in this bubble, right? Because you know what that does? I'm not saying soccer is going to, I said, dude, you're probably not going to start varsity. You might not even start JV. But you're going to be put in an uncomfortable situation that's going to make you deal with your fear versus going, because the alternative is, you're not even old enough to get a job. You're going to go into your basement and you're going to draw your curtains and listen to depressing music and play video games and become isolated.
Yeah.
And that's the plan. That's what fear does. It isolates you, right? And this happens to us because when we don't pursue our dreams, it's not like we go and do other things. We just isolate, we draw back. And I'm telling him, I'm like, you're at a crucial point in your life. And this is not about soccer. This is, are you going to let fear keep you from being who you want to be? And I said, I'm going to tell you this. If you come out, I'm not going to tell you you're going to have less anxiety. Because I have anxiety. I'm the coach, right?
Yeah.
Like I get anxiety. But I'm going to tell you, you're going to have some great experiences. You're going to meet some of your best friends. You're also going to meet some kids you don't like. You're going to have some of your best coaches, and you're going to have coaches you don't like. And you're going to have like great bus rides, and you're going to have amazing last-second victories, and you probably might have last-second losses. And you're going to be dealing with all of this stuff, but it's going to get you past that. And here's the thing, I'm not even going to tell you you're not going to have anxiety, but it's going to let you go to that next level as opposed to stopping where you're at in your life. And that's where your life stops. Where the fear stops you is where your life stops. And I'm like, at 14 years old, you're not allowed to stop. You need to come out and do this, not because you're going to be a great soccer player, but because this is a defining moment in your life. And this soccer just happens to be this thing that's being used right now to see what you're going to do with it. Because I said, when you're a senior, you're going to have another fearful moment, and it's going to be called graduation, right? And what are you going to do? Like, are you going to choose to go off to the military, go off to college, go get a job, or are you going to be like, oh, I'm fearful, I have anxiety, right? Because I said, I know adults today, and then I told him, he's a 14-year-old kid, I said, I know adults today that are stuck in dead-end jobs, never pursuing their dreams, hate their life because they never learned that it's not these mythical things that's holding them back. It's fear.
Yeah.
Fear is holding them back. That's it. They're giving it a name. You have the courage to realize it's fear. Yeah. So like you do not want to be those adults, right? And so I want to close on this because, like I said, whether you're a 14-year-old boy or girl intimidated to do something because it's scary, or you're an adult, not ready to go, not ready to take that next step of your life because you're scared, but you're an adult now, so you've given your fear a name. It's time to realize it's fear. Be done with it. Deal with it. Apply wisdom and move forward in your life. So anyways, I think we beat this horse to death.
Did he try out?
He did.
He did? And he made the team?
He did great.
Good for him.
Honestly, here's what's great. He had a ton of anxiety, and he said he hadn't played in a year and a half. He had just come off an injury. And again, all these like little kind of micro excuses just in case it didn't work out. And I pulled him aside and said, hey, had I not known any of that, I would have never noticed. I would have thought this kid's played his whole life. He's good to go. And you could just kind of see but I'm like, hey, but guess what? It's going to be a stressful year. Let's go. Because I'm not here to take the pressure off yet. Right? So, but yeah, he tried out. Good job, bud.
Good. good. Awesome.
Alrighty. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.